Welcome to Inside the Franchise Diary for another edition of what's going on in franchising. And today I'm super excited to have Jose Dos Passos on the podcast with us. Jose is an entrepreneur above anything else, but he has also been a franchisee and a franchisor, and I'm quite sure he's got lots to share with us today. Welcome, Jose. Thank you for coming on Inside the Franchise Diary to share your experiences with us.
Thanks for inviting me. It's been a while, but always great to hear from you. Thanks once again. Nice to be here.
Thanks, Jose. I could tell everybody that actually when I met you, you were a franchisor. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about it's been many years. Your journey in franchising. Clearly you started off as a franchisee. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey becoming a franchisee and what that's been like for you?
Many years ago, I joined a company called CTM. I'm sure you know it. I was interested in getting into that space, retail, fashion, home supply. I did some research, and I didn't know then that CTM was franchising, but on their website they had alluded to franchise stores and company-owned stores. So I just called the head office with no success. So I decided to actually go to the Italtile head office, which is in Bryanston. I just walked in and I got a retail showroom. They said at the head office upstairs. As I was walking up the stairs, I bumped into the chairman, Mr. Ravazotti here. He asked me, what am I looking for? I said, I'm here to see somebody about a franchise. It was very coincidental. I don't think I would have gotten a franchise if I hadn't bumped into him. A long story short, met all the franchising people. They didn't really have a franchise division, but they were looking for franchisees. So I suppose I was there at the right time, the right place. They offered me a site in Mozambique, first of all.
Wow.
So I did spend some time in Mozambique to open up their first store because of my Portuguese background and knowing the language. But spending some time there, I spent about a month and did some research. We found the site, and the CTM model is they own all their own sites. They're landlords, and you pay a percentage of your turnover to CTM for that site. We couldn't find a site that they could buy, so we found a very good site, but the rental was astronomical. After spending some time there, we realized that it was a lot more difficult to do business there than it was in South Africa. So I told the guys, listen, this is not for me. Obviously, I must have left an impression because they didn't let me go. Eventually, they offered me the Westgate store, which is a corporate store, and I decided to do a JV. So it was a joint venture. So it's a blend of a franchise. So you still got head office involved, but you driving it. And I was with the group for 5 years. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I knew nothing about tiles. Incredible company, stick work ethic. They were going through a lot of transformation, a lot of IT infrastructure. They were integrating SAP. And I did very nicely out of the store. Won top franchisee 2 years in a row. Grew the store numbers fantastically. But I felt a little bit constrained within the CTM environment. I then went to see the chairman and I said to him, listen, I wanted to start a business within CTM, which was a wooden flooring business. He said, okay, I must research it. So I did. I brought him back an idea, which was ELF, exclusive laminated flooring. So we started that force. He allowed me to open up 2 sites, one within a CTM in Montana and then one outside a CTM, just to test both models, whether a pure standalone store would work or an integrated store. The standalone store worked much better. Then I wanted to grow that, but because of the landlord integration, he couldn't get it past the board. So I said to him, listen, I was going to start my own thing. So we're very supportive. They actually helped me with the whole IT system. So I started a company called Floors Direct, and Ravazotti assisted me with that. For the first 12 months, they helped me with the shipping, and I could use their SAP system, and then eventually I went on to my own system. And yeah, the idea was to grow it, and one was to try and get great people on board, and secondly, we couldn't find managers, and it was obviously capital intensive. So we decided to go the franchising route, and that's when I reached out to you. You helped us a lot. I mean, you put together the operations manual. We met your legal lady, Maria. She put together the franchise doc. We grew the business to 13 sites around the country. And then I sold my share to my business partner. I wanted to go do something else. Then I moved on from there. I got into the restaurant space.
Absolutely.
So quite
very. I was going to say, so we went from flooring. That's when I met you. I met you when you were looking at franchising Floors Direct. But then I always remember you as definitely in something like Doppio Zero and the restaurant business. Where did you actually start, Jose? I always think of you with Mickey and Paul back in the day. Tell us a little bit about that, because you know, how many of those sort of franchise? I know it was Piza, Vino, and Doppio Zero. I remember distinctly meeting with you. I don't know if you still own Hobart. Meeting with you at the Hobart store.
Yes. So over the years, what's transpired is that I really enjoy opening businesses and setting them up. So how I got into the restaurant space is my sister was living overseas. She decided to move back, and she didn't really have an idea of a career path. She worked for a big company in Portugal, and I suggested, listen, what about a coffee shop? We knew nothing about restaurants. I approached famous brands, and they had the Brazilian concept. And when Clearwater Mall opened, as they were trying to find tenants, I managed to get a little spot, and Brazilian wasn't present in the tenants. They had Mug and Bean, they had Wimpy, they had a couple of the other brands. So we opened up the Brazilian, a very big Brazilian store, and it did very well. My sister was supposed to run it. I mean, she lived overseas for 11 years. She comes back here and she met her current husband. And he said to her, listen, you're not going to be involved in restaurants. So I ended up with this restaurant. Then I was approached by a couple who were living in Rustenburg. They wanted to move back to Joburg, and they said they wanted to buy the store. So I said, okay, fine. We'll sell it to them, I'd met Mickey. He had visited the Brazilian store, and he had just started franchising. He's that franchised the first store in Bedford View, and they were busy opening up Rosebank. When I sold Brazilian, I phoned him and I said, Mickey, I'd like to get involved. At that stage, they had, I think, 3 stores, and they were super busy. It was a combination of Mediterranean food with bakery, very new to the South African landscape. The shops were very busy. We were looking around for about 2 years, and then eventually Baileys came about, and I opened up that store.
I remember that.
And I don't know if you know the history of Baileys Mall, the Theodisa brothers who
disappeared.
So the store kicked off. Yes, disappeared. That mall took off the first 6 months, and then everything disappeared. They stopped paying the utilities bill. We had no water, we had no lights, and literally from a fully let center, everybody started closing down. Spa went into business rescue, so Spa head office took it over. Woolies closed, Ocean Basket closed, all the stores closed. Eventually it was only myself and Spa, and the store was a ghost mall. But I persevered. The franchisors were really helpful. So I think if I was alone, I would have probably closed the business down. They really assisted with trying to make ends meet with a very low turnover. The center was sold, Virgin Active opened up, the Spa was open to a good operator, and the center flourished. We really did well. I owned that site for quite a while. I eventually sold it to the guy from the Spa. I went on to open up a few other stores with Mickey and Paul. So all in all, I opened up 7 Doppio Zeros, and I've sold them all. I don't own a Hobart any longer.
Okay. Wow.
And the one Pizza Vino.
Yes. Then you've obviously done that, and you're an entrepreneur, because that comes through even when we look at your flooring side and how you already were looking for other opportunities. But tell us, Jose, you've been on both ends of the spectrum now. You've been the franchisee, you've been the franchisor, and I'm really happy to hear when you say that Doppio Zero, the guys were fantastic and they helped you. And I think for me that is so important in this podcast, because what I'm really trying to get across is the success of franchising when it's done well. So that people understand that the things that a franchisor should do for a franchisee, and when they need to step in and help. Tell us a little bit about what have you enjoyed most in the franchising environment? What did you like about being a franchisor, and what do you prefer to be a franchisee? What do you like about either side?
So it's definitely easier being a franchisee.
I'm sure.
Franchisee, listen, I think it's not a silver bullet. So you still need to really work hard. You need to problem solve. But there's a lot of elements in the formula that are there. It's like a recipe. If you get the recipe, follow it, and you'll get a beautiful dish at the end. If you're starting off from scratch, you have to find the ingredients and a lot of tasting, and that takes a long time. So you really save time when you buy into a franchise if you follow the model to a certain degree, because I think every site, especially if it's a bricks and mortar site, brings its own set of opportunities and challenges. So it's up to the franchisee to take advantage of that, and it's not always the franchisor's fault. You know, if your site is a greenfield site and the area around you still needs to develop, you need to kind of persevere, and your marketing has to be a bit more strategic as opposed to opening a site that's in the middle of a very established area in terms of feet. So I think being a franchisee also is not so lonely. So you meet other franchisees. It helps you to network a bit quicker. If you're setting up from scratch, you know, that journey is lonely. And when you start franchising, those franchisees are also entrepreneurial in nature. So there's a definitive clash sometimes. Franchisee wants to impart his own ways because his store is specific, and the franchisor is trying to create a standard. But I think what works is a blend of both. That I found has really worked. If I take the Doppio Zero model, they were always willing to allow the franchisees to put in certain specials, depending where they were. You know, if it was a Saint store, or if it was a West Rand store or a East Rand store, there are nuances in terms of taste profile. So they were very willing to do that. But there were certain things they were set on, like their breakfast, they were really powerful on. You know, it's a very strong business meeting community, and I think that's how they built their business. Their baking, fantastic support. So you always knew if you arrived at 7 o'clock in the morning, their delivery guys would be there. So that back-end support was invaluable. Yeah, I think there's benefits to both. I think the downside of being a franchisor is that you need to get to scale, and that's when you start becoming profitable. But up to a certain level, it's a costly exercise. You know, so you're sinking huge amounts of cash to get to a certain point. So then you either decide, all right, do I stabilize or to carry on growing? And I think most of the successful franchises, that from a head office point of view, their distribution is where they actually generate their revenue, and not so much from the franchise fees. So you need a lot of sites to warrant the distribution, like a Famous Brands or a Spur. They make the money because obviously they've got set items you have to buy from head office, and they make a margin on it, which is great because it makes it easier for the franchisee.
100%. And I love what you've said there in terms of sometimes, you know, it has to be a blend. It's not just what is the franchisor doing, as opposed to, you know, the franchisee is not allowed to be entrepreneurial, etc. Because I do think, depending on how established a brand is, you need entrepreneurial franchisees at certain times of the brand versus other times of the brand where you just want the franchisee to implement. I still think, and I'm seeing it more and more, I see franchisees going rogue and doing things, and you know that I've been doing this for a very long time. And it's because franchisors are not really listening. The franchisee is definitely perceiving the franchisor is not hearing them, you know, therefore they're going out and doing certain things. So it's lovely when you hear franchisors that are more established and have been in this game for a long time being open to, you know, encouraging their franchisees to share things and testing and seeing where it takes the brand. So that's amazing.
Exactly.
When I saw you again after many, many years, it was actually because you were interested in acquiring a Westpac line. Not only have you done food floor, you've done plastic. That's general merchandise as opposed to doing food. And then tell us a little bit about your journey with Food Lovers Market, because that was also quite a brave step that you took. At the Randburg Lifestyle Centre, you opened up that Food Lovers, which was lovely, and the centre obviously needed something. And alongside it, you created a great little eatery, which you can tell us about. And tell us what, you know, why did you decide to do that, and what prompted you to take that? Because again, you've gone out of just food and now you're actually into real perishable food, which is quite a challenge to manage.
Yeah, so it was an interesting story again when I sold, which I think I sold Doppio Hobart. At that stage, I was involved in a restaurant in Parktown called La Boccheria. I don't know if you know it. So it's a Spanish-style restaurant. Beautiful. We bought the house, we demolished it, and we built this beautiful structure. It became very successful, and I sold that business as well. We were looking at doing something a bit bigger, a bit more ostentatious. I went to the lifestyle center for a friend, his little boy's birthday party inside the Silver Birch, and I hadn't been there for years, and I saw that the old Premier site had closed down, and I thought, geez, this would be a great site for a restaurant. It was quite big, but my idea was to do something crazy like a beer distillery with bands. So I called the landlord on a Monday, oldish guy, very set in his ways. He said he was talking to Colcaccios. I said, listen, you need to talk to me. I'm the right guy. So I went to see him, and he said that they got an offer from Colcaccios. I said to him, you need to listen to me. Come to my restaurant in Parktown North. So I had dinner with him. He loved what we did there. And I presented the offer to him. And we went down this road of designing this brewery with massive tanks, and we were going to do live bands. His concern was the neighbors in terms of the noise. So they came back to us and said, guys, we can't do a type of restaurant. But I'd kind of fallen in love with the site. And I said to him, what about like a farmer's market? Because that's what the nursery needed, and there were a lot of feeds. He said, yeah, if you bring food. And there was some concept I'd seen overseas where they had multiple genres of food under one roof. And I thought, but gee, that's going to be a lot of work. Anyway, long story short, I bumped into the guys from Food Lovers because they were trying to buy an ice cream concept which I had, which was called Moody Cow.
Yes.
And I met Mike Coppin, and we had a couple of meetings, and it was actually at the same stage I was looking at the lifestyle center, and I just had a brainwave. I said, Mike, what about a Food Lovers on this site? And he knew the site because there used to be RB's Theatre of Food back in the day. So we visited the site, and it was very small upstairs. So we went to the landlord. It was operationally, it was a massive redevelopment. So the landlord, he decided to revamp the whole center. So we built this very unique Food Lovers with all the production underground, with the lifts, and then the retail space upstairs. But we always said to the landlord, listen, we want to open up a beautiful restaurant because that's what we know. And we developed Streatery, which is a play on words on eatery, Food Lovers Eatery. And it was an all-day cafe. Bolted onto the Food Lovers, and it just took off. It was phenomenal from day one. So it actually, from a profit perspective, it actually did better than the Food Lovers, believe it or not.
I can believe it.
But it was super successful. I was quite taken back. People were queuing up in the morning. They just loved the menu that we put together. And then, Food Lovers approached us and said, guys, we'd like you to open up a few more of these stores. So we did a JV with them on the street, and then we opened up 2 other stores with them. And we subsequently opened up another Food Lovers with them, JV. So we sold the lifestyle store as a full franchise store, and we JV'd with them at the Waterfall store with the Streatery there. And then we opened up a third one in the Centurion store. And I think they were going through some restructuring of Food Lab head office, and they approached me and said, listen, they wanted to buy the sites out. I tried to franchise it, but they had other ideas, so I sold the brand Street to Food Lovers. And it was successful, it's still going well.
Yeah, it's
very,
a great
very
little
nice concept.
Tell us what you're doing now. Franchisee anymore?
I'm not a franchisee anymore, so I sold the Food Lovers and the Street. And just before COVID, we were approached by some guys in Rosebank, and they had this very interesting and exciting concept. They wanted to develop a hotel, offices, and retail and restaurants all in one precinct. And I've always loved Rosebank. And it was where the old F&B used to be in Rosebank. So they had the idea of 3 different restaurants, and we had just come off the success of Food Lovers and La Boccheria, and we said to the guys, we want to take everything as ours. We'll do all the restaurants as one big restaurant. It became a massive project. We signed it up, 10-year lease, and COVID hit. We were obviously a little bit snookered. We went to the landlord and said, listen, we can't do the project. He got quite upset. And literally a week later, he phoned us and he said, okay, what do you need? So they were fantastic landlords. They became our bankers in a way, but fabulous guys. And we built Pride Mary. So the whole concept changed because of COVID. A lot of the retail disappeared. It just became the hotel. The hotel was mothballed for a year after COVID, and we opened the restaurant the first period that we could after COVID. But we built the restaurant during COVID, which was very challenging because people couldn't travel. I couldn't interview staff, so I had to phone a lot of my old staff who weren't working. We brought them on board. We were doing a lot of tastings, and we opened it up. It's been now 4 years ago, on the 14th of February.
Wow, Jose.
And the first 6 months was terrible. Been terrible. We had to close again in July. During that year, you remember that, when the laws kept on changing.
It's terrible.
And then literally it took us a year to kind of find our feet. It was terrible. Rosebank was dead. And then the following year, when the hotel opened, they set up the whole hotel, but they closed it. They'd set everything up. Even the bed sheets were made, but they weren't prepared to open because no travel was allowed. And the hotel opened, and we started getting, obviously, we contracted the hotel to do all their breakfasts. And then it just took off. I mean, it became very successful. We've been here now 4 years, so it's been really good. And I've opened subsequently 2 other restaurants in Rosebank, Fugazi and Mama Samba, and not through design. Old Mutual approached us because of Proud Mary's success, and they had sites that were really good sites. They gave us a decent landlord TI. I've got a little head office, and we employ 350 people in Rosebank. So it's been very good.
That's an amazing, amazing journey. Given I don't know half of that, having known you for years. The one thing I take out of this is you've been in COVID twice. Once at ballet and once in real COVID.
Yes.
And honestly,
exactly.
The one thing I'll say is you're tenacious. You make it through no matter what. Thank you, Jose. That's been an amazing story, and we wish you tons of success with Proud Mary.
Thank you so much.
I've been there a couple of times. It's really lovely. You did a great job. But I don't think I've ever gone to anything where you own it and it isn't a great job. And just before I let you go, coming back to franchising, what would you say to somebody? Because what I put inside the franchise diary together was to encourage people to look at franchising and to show what franchising can do. You are certainly a really good example of somebody who has been in franchising, turned it around, moved into being an entrepreneur, come back into franchising, turned it around, and moved on again. What advice would you give someone who is looking to get into franchising? What would be your pearls of wisdom at this point? What should they do?
Well, I think still has to be an entrepreneurial flair. Like I said earlier, it's not a silver bullet. It's really hard work. You need to put in the time, you need to put in the effort. But I think if you want to be financially independent, it's definitely, I would suggest it for anybody who doesn't come from a business background. If you're in a corporate world, or if you want to get involved in business and understand business, because the only way you're going to do it is by being entrenched. It's like me teaching my son how to swim from outside the pool. You have to get wet. So it's really a great platform to learn basics of how to read an income statement, how to deal with people, how to deal with staff. So it really gives you a very rounded learning, an inside learning of practical learning of business, which no degree can give you. It's one thing studying accounting, but if you have to pay those bills at the end of the month, it becomes very real. And I think franchising gives you a wonderful platform and support to get you through those difficult times. And I think your success rate is a lot easier or higher if you're in that environment, because so many things have been done for you. And I mean, being on both sides of the fence, I can tell you just from restaurants, developing a recipe, there's so many costs that come to that. So I know friends of mine always say, you don't pay franchise fees. Yes, I don't pay franchise fees, but I also don't pay, a franchisee doesn't pay a chef $100,000 a month to develop.
Yeah. Yeah. Ask you for a minute. I can hear you.
So all the beautiful things that you get, the packaging, the branding, the social media, that is all value that a non-franchise business needs to go and find and put in. In today's world, there's so many options to the consumer, and brands are definitely what people go to, because it's confusing when you try and shop when you're out there. So that's why the brands work, like ShopRite Checkers, like a Wimpy, they do work. So I would definitely recommend it. And also from a financing point of view, it's a lot easier to finance a brand as opposed to try and do it yourself. So that's what I would say, that if you want to get started on your journey of becoming a business owner, definitely franchising is the way to go.
Thanks, Jose. You certainly proved that. And, you know, I would only add from my perspective that you chose good brands. I look at, do those brands still exist today? So CTM certainly is still there. You know, those brands have all stood the test of time. Doppio Zero, you know, Food Lovers Market, etc. You certainly chose well, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
I think that's also important, that somebody choose well and know what they're looking for in order to have that independence that you're talking about. Jose, thanks so much. It was so lovely to have you on our podcast today. It was wonderful to hear your story, because even I didn't know half of that. And I really look forward to hearing you tell me you're going to franchise something in the future and dealing with you again. I'm quite sure that our paths will cross again. Thank you, Jose. Thanks for your time. Take care. Thank you. Bye. Bye.